Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video. The guest of honor here today is the Acer Swift Go. It's been loaded with the most current generation specification, including Intel's brand new Core Ultra 7 series processor, a speedy 16 GB of LPDDR5X memory, and a reasonably generous 1 TB SSD. Intel's integrated ARC graphics. Of course, we've also got Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5 standards, and this is a 14-inch display. As you can tell, this laptop has a lot of new stuff packed into it. But we're going to answer the ultimate question of what you can expect with the Acer Swift Go. It is technically a premium tier laptop, so we're going to treat it as such and give you guys an honest rundown like we always do. Starting with a quick tour of the packaging experience. Things are looking as generic as ever. You basically get a plain old cardboard box in typical Acer fashion, but it's inside what counts, right? Because you will find behind a ton of protective packaging the Acer Swift Go itself. It's definitely a petite-looking laptop, but more than that in a minute. You also have a standard 65-watt charging adapter, though this year you get USB-C charging out of the box, which is nice to see. You also have the standard W outlet charging cable piece, and then of course a quick start guide with some basic warranty and regulation information. Now look, I really don't want to hate on the design here. I don't really have a problem with the general looks of this machine. The problem is that Acer has been recycling the same design elements from previous Swift and Aspire models for nearly a decade, and this laptop just feels old news. It's not refreshing in terms of its looks. It's not a new design. Most other brands have at least put some effort into renewing their designs. Acer just doesn't seem to care much about this factor. With that said, you do have a full metallic exterior, giving it a more premium feel and finish. The laptop has an overall weight of 1.32 kilograms, which is about as heavy as you expect your average 14-inch laptop to be, and should be good for all-day carrying. Again, starting with the front side or the top side. I should say you'll notice you have a clean, flat surface with no particular texture. That the iconic silver color was with most Acer laptops, and the branding on the top side of this laptop is fantastic. So on one side, you have two fully loaded Thunderbolt 4 USB-C ports. You also have an HDMI 2.1 port and, of course, a USB Super Speed port with reverse charging. On the other side, you have a Kensington lock. You have one more USB Super Speed port. You have the good old headphone jack, and you have a micro SD card reader. The bottom side of this laptop has a fairly thin enclosure. You'll notice you have two long air intake vents in a linear fashion because you do have a dual fan setup, so there is plenty of airflow. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. You'll also notice you have two speakers, one in each corner. This is a bottom-firing speaker setup in a stereo configuration, and rest assured, we will do a sound test closer to the end of the video unfolding. This laptop actually presents you with a pretty nice-looking inner chassis. So you have that clean metallic exterior combined with that silver color to give it a pretty gracious look. The problem is that it's covered with stickers all over, which totally kills the vibe. Now at the center, you have a larger-than-life trackpad. At first glance, this looks like a glass or trackpad, but your eyes are fooling you because it is very much a plastic surface. On top of that, there is some degree of flex toward the corners. Unfortunately, the e-clicks are tactile, but this trackpad just kind of falls short of something you'd expect on a premium tier laptop like this. Acer has definitely improved their keyboard game a little bit with this laptop, so the first thing you'll notice is that the keycap seems to be slightly better labeled. The font is a little bit more bold and a little bit brighter, and you have a decent amount of surface area per keycap. Additionally, the keyboard is, of course, fully supported in multiple brightness settings. Since it is a 14-inch laptop, you won't get a 10 keypad, but that's standard practice, and you have a built-in fingerprint scanner as well. What I really like about this keyboard is that Acer has kind of elevated the overall height of each keycap, which gives you a deeper key travel and a more tactile keystroke, thereby providing a pretty decent typing experience. It's not going to be as good as the Licolo Noo IdeaPad series or MacBook, of course, but it is still nonetheless a decent attempt. Now we come to one huge design flaw, and that's the fact that Acer continues to put the heat exhaust vents directly beneath the LCD screen. In the past, this has had repercussions for long-term wear and tear, and I guarantee you, for some people, it will still be a problem, which is a bit of an unfortunate thing on the actor side. As far as the hinge quality goes, it's definitely nice. It's sturdy, there's not a lot of wobble. It's well tuned. As long as you're generally gentle with it, it should last you for years to come. And then, of course, we come to the display fitting itself. It's reasonable enough, in my opinion. So you have a fairly thin chin at the bottom with some basic branding. You'll also appreciate the fact that the bezels are more or less in line with modern-day standards. So they're nice and thin in terms of overall thickness, and then again, a fairly thin forehead at the top. Acer is really leading the charge with this laptop over here, and I hope all other brands and manufacturers really pick up this practice. Let's talk about the display itself. Now, key distinction. This is not the OLED model. That's an entirely separate model of the Acer Swift. This is the standard IPS LCD screen with a full HD+ resolution. You also have a 16 by 10 aspect ratio as a result, and it's worth noting that you do have a base refresh rate of 60 Hz. Unfortunately, with this, you only get the higher refresh rate with the OLED panel. Additionally, you have a peak brightness of 300 nits, which means this laptop isn't super bright, but it's bright enough overall. Additionally, you'll find that the viewing angles are also quite nice, and the blacks are also pretty well done. And then, I do want to also note that this is a touch capture display. So yes, you can use the touchscreen, and it's fairly responsive, all things considered, and it keeps a matte finish. At that, the overall color rating is also pretty good. You have a 100% sRGB rating. It's not 100% Adobe RGB, unfortunately, so if you are using it for extreme creative purposes, you will find the colors a little bit of L, but for general viewing, the colors are sharp and vivid enough. A quick performance recap. So we've got Intel's brand new Meteor Lua Core Ultra 7 processor based on a new architecture. We also, of course, have 16 GB of LPDDR5X memory, and then past that, we do have Intel's integrated Arc IGPU. Now, all this basically translates to the usual day-to-day performance, and you're not going to notice any improvement. Obviously, everything feels fast and snappy, whether it's browsing the web or doing some word productivity. However, you will find that other niche tasks have subtle improvements, like program or coding, for example, which feels a little bit more responsive and capable. And then there's big improvements in areas like doing 3D animation, where, thanks to the accelerated performance of the IGPU, you get a lot better performance in general. Now, one area where I wasn't as impressed is the king of all activities on a laptop. Multi-layer 10-bit 4K video editing on Dany Resolve. I was expecting this to be a substantial improvement, but I still find the performance is more or less similar to what you would get on a 13th generation i7 series chip. You have a little bit of lag if you have too many layers of 10-bit footage, and it's not particularly faster, though it is worth noting that render times have considerably improved, and that itself is a credible improvement. It's also worth noting that, of course, this is a semi-new architecture, so there will be subtle improvements over time as companies kind of optimize their programs for this brand new chip. Now, one area where I was really impressed is gaming. That Arc integrated graphics set is really killing it here. The fact that you can play games like Fortnite at medium to high settings and almost hit 60 FPS the whole way through is something that was unheard of a couple years back. This is definitely an area where Intel has been innovating. It's nice to see the IGPU game come so far from what it used to be. Another area where you see substantial improvement is thermal. So Intel chips are notoriously known for being the hottest of the bunch. No more is that the case. We found under unrealistic peak loads, we only hit a maximum average surface temperature of 40 degrees Celsius, and under more realistic loads, this laptop stays around the 35 degrees Celsius mark. These are much cooler numbers than the 13th generation. Hardware fan noise is unfortunately going to be fairly high at around 50 dB under peak load, and that frequently happens. This is, of course, because you have a dual fan setup, but I'd rather have louder fan noise than a hotter laptop. Generally speaking, upgradability is fairly limited, so you cannot upgrade the RAM that's entirely soldered on board. However, you can upgrade the existing NVMe SSD. You have that same slot, so you can change that around, and it's also known that you can technically also upgrade the Wi-Fi module. Acer provides you with a 65 watt-hour battery here, and again, colossal improvements based on our real-world test. We got up to 12.5 hours of battery life doing day-to-day standard activities, which again is about 4 hours more on average than previous generation hardware. Now, the speaker quality unfortunately isn't all that great. It sounds like a pretty generic standard stereo speaker setup. There's not a lot of depth in the overall quality. I've done a quick sound test for your reference.
Give me a sign, will everything be alright? I need a sign, cause I don't wanna waste my time. Sometimes I don't wanna wake up, I feel tired in my bed, wanna lay up. Watch TV instead, about fake love. Let the drama unfold with my brain up.
Let me tell you that it's approximately $1,000. This is definitely a premium range category, and the Swift Go is kind of a laptop that achieves some things but also cuts a lot of corners. For example, the design here feels dated. It has some major flaws, like having a heat exhaust vent facing upwards, and just isn't the brightest looking laptop of the batch. However, on the other side, fantastic port diversification combined with a respectable display, a good keyboard, and of course, fantastic battery life, along with generational improvements in the performance sector, really make this a great laptop. On the other hand, it's really going to come down to what you want. If your key priority is maximum performance, then this is a laptop that I think has consistent improvements, but if you're trying to look for a laptop that feels new and feels more refreshed, this is not the best one out there. It's really feeling dated, like I said, so it's just going to depend on your personal priorities. Let me know what you think of the Acer Swift Go 14. As always, guys, if you enjoyed this video, then hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Have a good day. See you soon and you are awesome.